stuff without getting called on it. And it would be really bad if I got called on, procedures like that. So I do try to keep it real, and I think it's more fun for the reader when you do too.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I read Final Judgment. I finished it this morning, and I really enjoyed it. And it was different than I thought it was going to be because it's a lot of action, fast-paced action. It was a lot of fun to read that, and you have a lot of twists on there as well. So is that something that you feel like people are going to be expecting something because they know who you are as a lawyer, or is that not the case anymore now that you've have several books under your belt now?
I just don't know, Alan. They might still be expecting, I think you're kind of referring to courtroom drama.
Yeah.
You people kind of expect to see that. They might still, it's hard to say that I wouldn't blame them. The thing they know me from is court. But I really try in writing to stay away from the courtroom. I think every kind of possible permutation of a dramatic scene in a courtroom has been done a million times. And to the extent in today's world where people know too much about what really goes on, to the extent you can draw something dramatic happening in a courtroom that makes sense, it doesn't make people go, oh, give me a break. I don't know there's much left to do in that way. So I really try to stay out of the courtroom for the most part, unless there's some kind of fun jousting that the lawyers could do with each other. But pretty much I keep all the books in the field running around.
And so Final Judgment is the fourth book in the Samantha Brickman series. How did you get the idea for the character and for the series when you first started it?
A total accident. It was the weirdest thing. I had finished the Rachel Knight series, and I was determined to write a standalone. And I took a crack at one that focused on a juror. I took a crack at one that focused on crime victim, and nothing really gelled. And then Samantha just appeared, in my brain. She was just standing there looking at me with a hand on one hip and saying, what about me? And okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. And it really happened like that. And then so I just had to explore, so who is she and how'd you get this way? And it just started from there. Do
you see it putting any of your own traits, personal and your lawyering skills into Samantha Brickman? Do you kind of mesh those two worlds, or do you keep them separate?
Yeah. You can't help but write about from your own experience, whether you mean to or not. I think that writers put themselves in every character in one way or another. It's not necessarily a direct one-to-one correlation, but there is, some kind of, there are ways that are probably subconscious, really. In Samantha, she was just kind of an avatar. She's my id, She cures the failings of the justice system. Where bad guys might ordinarily walk out the door, she makes sure they can't. And she takes care of the guys who got busted, who really deserve a good defense and are kind of victims of society. She has her own sense of justice about who deserves it, who deserves help, and who deserves not help. Punishment. And then she does it herself. She's judge, jury, and executioner. And yes, not unusual for her to be executioner. So it's kind of satisfying to write a character who can swing for the fences, break all laws. She doesn't just break them. She shreds them and then she burns them. She's somebody who I always consider her as kind of a little on the spectrum, if you will. She definitely has people she loves and she's close to, but not many because she has a very traumatic childhood that kind of left her scarred and suspicious of everyone, particularly the law enforcement and the justice system. So, which is why she has no regard for authority whatsoever or rules. But she does the right thing, and ultimately, and it's really kind of fun and liberating to write a character like that who has she doesn't suffer a lot of pangs of conscience. Let's put it that way.
Have you ever put any of the stories that you encountered in your real life or in your actual cases into your books, or are they ripped from the headlines like Law and Order, or no?
No, I really don't do that. I mean, what I do is I take themes, something that kind of hits me that's happening in the real world. Like, for example, in Final Judgment, instead of starting with a dead body, I start with the fact that Samantha's boyfriend, Nico, has been involved with this stock trading company called Gold Strike. And Nico's a world famous martial artist who's gone very entrepreneurial, and he starts investing with these guys, makes a lot of money, turns on his friends and his mother. This company, everybody makes money, and then suddenly there's a Bitcoin trade that they do that goes way belly up, and everyone loses everything, including his mother. And he goes after these guys to talk to them and find out what happened, and then one turns up dead, and the other one is missing. and he becomes a person of interest. So, and then, of course, Sam has to defend him and wonder whether he did kill these guys. And if he did, she wouldn't mind, but don't lie to me. So it's a kind of a different thing where she expects him to tell her everything that he's done. On the other hand, she admits she doesn't tell him what she's done. He doesn't know what she's doing on the wrong side of the law. So there's a lot of twists and turns morally as well as action-wise. But I certainly took the page out of the Bernie Madoff thing, out of the real Bitcoin fraud that has happened, and played it out. So what happens when people lose everything? What kind of enemies does that create, and how do they get to that position? And so it's always something that's happening in the world that kind of starts my wheels turning in terms of the crime that I want to talk about.
That was familiar when I was reading in Final Judgment, was that whole BitConnect Ponzi scheme thing that happened in real life. I was like, oh, this is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And so how much research do you put into these books before you actually start writing them?
No, not a ton. I'll read news articles and stuff about how a crime really went down. I read up on Bitcoin for a while until I decided really the ins and outs and intricacies of Bitcoin are not fun or interesting to read about. So I really kind of skimmed I skimmed the technical aspects of how it works and why it works, because I don't think if you want to read about that, you're not going to want to read my book. And if you read my book, you're not going to read about that. So I just kind of threw the term out there, but I did study it, and I always do research throughout the process of writing, like what would this really happen? Would that really happen? It's kind of an ongoing thing.
And do you are you like an outliner, or do you just sit down and start writing the story once you're ready to go?
No, I outline. I definitely do. I have to make sure that there's enough story there, that the characters are compelling enough, that there's enough of the story that moves the characters into exposing themselves to make for an interesting read. So I do an outline, and I kind of follow the system that I learned in writing for television, where you do an outline, and I do an outline that's a general story description of where we start, who our characters are, and where we end. And then I do a chapter breakdown, which is really a scene. So I have a tendency to do short chapters, and each chapter is a scene.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that when that you had actually done television work, and you actually co-created that ABC TV show, The Fix. Are there big differences between writing a television script versus a book?
Oh yeah, there are definitely big differences. You can sit down with a book and put somebody in Bora Bora, and then you can put them in New York City, and then you can put them in Hong Kong. And, if you try to do that in a script, you're probably not going to get your show picked up because it costs too much. So you have, there are certainly constraints in a script that you don't have in a book. But by the same token, with a script, you obviously have images. People can see who people are, and they can hear how they say the words. And it's also a lot shorter. I mean, it's really, I think writing scripts is kind of like haiku. You have 58 pages to deliver a story, and the programs you have to use to write them have a lot of big, wide margins, so you don't have a lot of room, and you have to think about how to pack in the emotion and the drama in a very tight framework. Whereas in a book, you can really spread out more.
What's your writing day like when you're working on a project? Do you try to hit the X amount of words a day, or do you write every day?
I write every day. I write 7 days a week. I don't think about it in terms of words. I think about it in terms of, I want to get this part of the story. I want to finish that part of the story, scene. So as I write, I usually try to work through most of a chapter a day, but, we're only talking 4 or 5 pages. So, it all depends. Sometimes it only happens for 2 or 3 pages. And sometimes after those 2 or 3 pages, I go back and rip them out and start over. So I write every day, but it doesn't necessarily all, wind up in the book.
Final Judgment is the series finale. Are you going to miss writing about Samantha and those characters?
I am. I really love Samantha. I mean, she is really fun to write. So I never say never. It's possible to go back, and write more Samantha. But I did know that after I finished, when I was doing Final Judgment, I thought, this has got to be it. I've got to finally do a standalone and explore new territory and write from different perspectives, because I have to challenge myself, even though this book is driving me crazy, and I'm constantly asking, why did I have to do this? This is so hard.
Is that the standalone you're working on now?
Yeah, the one I'm working on now is making me bang my head on the wall. It's just crazy. And I look at myself, what is wrong with you that you had to do this? But it might be a form of masochism, but I'm doing it. I think it's important to challenge yourself and try to stretch as a writer and figure out how to do all different kinds of voices, not just the same kind of story over and over.
Is that also in the thriller mystery type genre? Or?
Well, of course. Yeah. I don't challenge myself that much. No, I just don't really have any. I don't have any interest in romance or coming of age or anything. I mean, I would do it if I had a burning interest in it. But I think people say you have to write what you know. I don't think that's necessarily true, but you do have to write what you love. And if I were, crime fiction is what I love. If I find at some point I love bodice rippers, I'll go for it.
And do you still do any legal work, or is that behind you now?
Not entirely. I mean, I did criminal appeals in, I think it's for the whole country. When you're convicted of a felony, remember this, Alan, when you're convicted of a felony.
I have to write this down.
Yeah, really, right? Take notes. When you're convicted of a felony and you can't afford a lawyer, and most people by the time they're sitting in prison cannot, state appoints a lawyer for you to represent you because you're entitled to one direct appeal to the Court of Appeals, which can go as far as to the Supreme Court. And so I was doing that. So it's court-appointed work for the indigent. It's kind of like a public defender, except you get to stay home and, work on it. It's all written. It's all writing, briefing and stuff. Very seldom oral arguments in court. So I was doing that for a number of years, and it's kind of slowed down as I've gotten more busy with television and, writing books and stuff. But it's something that I do think I might go back to because I really liked it.
You have this